Welcome back to the Birdhouse Dynasty show, and tonight, as promised, we're going to finish this free agency frenzy roundup by flying on over to the AFC, starting the AFC East with the Buffalo Bills. And now the Bills didn't do much to address their running back room. They're going to stay strong with James Cook and maybe add another running back through the draft. I don't think Leonard Fournette or Tavius Murray will be back. Maybe Murray will be back, but anyway, I wouldn't be surprised if they do draft a running back in this upcoming draft. But in the wide receiver room, they did make some adjustments. They let Gabe Davis head on down to Jacksonville and sort of filled his spot by bringing in Curtis Samuel. And Curtis Samuel was with Joe Brady down in Washington, so I guarantee that had something to do with this signing. Curtis Samuel is an interesting player. I do see some use for him. I would still definitely suspect that Stephon Diggs and Dalton Kincaid would be the top target options here, but don't be afraid if you're a little shallow on wide receiver to maybe add your second or third wide receiver on the bench in Curtis Samuel. You can pick him up pretty cheap, so it's not a bad option to go out there and grab. We'll head on down to Miami next, and the Dolphins went out and grabbed Jonnu Smith from the Atlanta Falcons. Now, Jonnu fills a definite need for the Dolphins. They haven't targeted tight end much at all since Mike McDonald came down to South Beach, and so maybe Jonnu Smith can change things. I definitely still see Jalen Waddle and obviously Tyreek Hill being the top target options for Tua. This just helps solidifies Tua's targets a little bit, and so I think this isn't a bad option to go out and grab if you're looking for some help at backup tight end. I'm not one to, fill up the tight end room too much on most of my dynasty teams, depending on format, of course. Some teams, maybe in a best ball league, I will just pass on the early options at tight end and just load up on a bunch of trash cans. But, Jonnu Smith definitely looked good last year, stole a lot of targets from our boy Kyle Pitts. And so Jonnu might have a couple good seasons left in him down in Miami. And they did not do anything in the running back room. Still have Raheem Mostert, the ageless wonder, the exciting one, and Devon Achane, as well as Jeff Wilson, Salvin Ahmad, and Chris Brooks, still all there for the Dolphins. Plenty of depth there for any injuries that should occur to the elderly Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane. And so I think the Dolphins are set for a nice run on the offensive end. Tua is even potentially maybe a dark horse MVP candidate this year. I don't know. We'll see. So I'm back on the horse with Tua. Last year I definitely avoided him with all those concussions issues from the previous season, but they seem to at least address the offensive line a little. I definitely think that they understand that's a top priority for them going forward with Tua as their leader. So if they want to keep that offense up at the top and give them a shot in the playoffs, they know they've got to keep Tua upright. Now, with the way the NFL's gone over the last year or two, I know myself, I dip deep into the backup quarterback situations on most teams, and I still see Mike White as a very nice stash. So check him out on waivers if you've got a very deep bench in your league, and don't be afraid to scoop up Mr. White, because he slung it around for the Jets 2 years ago, and I guarantee you, Tua goes down, he'll be happy to have a couple of options like Tyreek and Waddle to toss the rock to. So we'll move back up the coast all the way to the Jets before we get to New England. Now, the Jets did not do a whole lot. They look to probably be drafting a wide receiver. None of the rumors panned out. They did not end up with Devontae Adams. They did not get T. Higgins, at least not yet. All right, T. Higgins is definitely still out there and available. So we'll see what happens. No word yet out of Cincinnati. So who knows where Mr. Higgins will end up. But the Jets didn't really add much on the offensive end. Still looking like the Breece Hall show and the Garrett Wilson show as well through the air. And with a healthy Aaron Rodgers this year, they definitely should have a little more exciting of an offense. All right. They did get rid of Zach Wilson, mind you, and he hasn't found a home yet, surprisingly. And then we'll head out up to New England, where they did a little changing, a little cleaning of house, so to speak. They sent Mac Jones down to Jacksonville for a 6th rounder. Definitely wanted to kick him out of the office in the quarterback room. Brought in Jacoby Brissett, probably as a bridge quarterback to start the season off, depending on who they end up drafting in this wonderful 24 rookie draft that we've got coming up. Whether it's Drake May, Jaden Daniels, J.J. McCarthy, somebody lower. Who knows what the Patriots are going to do. Having the number 3 pick, they have a lot of options. So I think that we're looking at 2 quarterbacks going off the board, 1st and 2nd. But with the Patriots, I've seen it about 50-50 whether they go Marvin Harrison or quarterback. Either one is going to definitely help them out. Marvin Harrison, the guy, honestly, is the best prospect I've seen since Megatron. And so I am not worried one bit if he ends up in New England and he's catching balls from Jacoby Brissett, Bill Belichick, or even the corpse of Tom Brady. All right? Marvin Harrison is a true stud. He will produce in New England, in Arizona. Maybe he slides to the Chargers. I don't know. Maybe somebody trades up, but I'm not worried about Harrison one bit. Now, back to New England. We had them also add Antonio Gibson from Washington. And so that kind of crowds the room in the running back situation with the Patriots. It definitely will take some touches away from Ramondre Stevenson. He'll definitely see less targets through the air, as that's Antonio Gibson's specialty, obviously. And so I think sort of a 60-40 split is what we could probably expect. Antonio Gibson will probably score just about as many points as he was scoring down in Washington, which is very viable if you're going with a hero running back system. You can definitely plug Antonio Gibson in just about any week. Hope he scampers into the end zone, but otherwise he's going to get some targets. He'll get you those 5 to 10 points you're looking for out of your running back 2 spot, if that's the weakest spot on your roster. Generally how I like to play it. So I don't have a whole lot of Antonio Gibson, but I definitely wouldn't mind it if he's on my roster, if he's a toss-in a deal, something like that. So don't mind Antonio Gibson at all. Ramondre Stevenson, however, he loses all of that 3-down back power that he had going into last season. All of that cachet is now gone. But that could make him buy low, depending on the situation with the current owner in your league. So I don't know. It's not a situation I'm too excited about. I don't expect the Patriots to be jumping into the red zone too often this year. So the touchdowns will probably be limited for the Patriots. So it's not a situation with a whole lot of upside. But again, if you're just looking for a cheap running back too, I don't know. Maybe the guy who has Stevenson is just done with him and he'll give him away for nothing. You can check in. I don't know. They also brought back Hunter Henry, brought back Kendrick Bourne, and then the other day, was it last night or the night before? I forget. They brought KJ Osborne into the fold as well. None of them are outstanding talents. I don't see any of them getting over 50 or 60 catches. So to me, they're just kind of fodder on your roster, something that I just don't like to own. I'd rather have any running back on a 53-man roster than any of these guys, to be truthful with you. So it's just a situation in New England that I like to avoid right now. All right. I'm more of a wait and see on that situation in New England. Next up, though, we'll move over to the AFC North. That is probably the toughest division in the league. And we'll start right up at the top with the Baltimore Ravens and their huge acquisition of King Henry. So, King Henry is simply defying father time. He's now 30 years old and didn't have a great season in Tennessee. The whole offense as a whole in Tennessee was pretty downtrodden. Their O-line was awful, and King Henry just didn't have a lot of space to work with. That will be different in Baltimore. If you take a look at the running backs that have been alongside Lamar Jackson over the past few years, they aren't anything to write home about. But I'll tell you what, if Kenyon Drake, Gus Edwards, and just about any guy off the couch can produce for them, I guarantee you King Henry will produce. I am sky high on King Henry now. I told you guys about him before the free agency period. Hopefully you were able to go out there and acquire him, because now I guarantee you whoever's got him is hanging on to him for dear life. Because whoever had him last year, probably a contender in your league. So it's going to be hard to pry him away from that contender with anything less than a late first, probably. So it's going to be a pretty pricey, pretty expensive price for a 30-year-old back. But again, as I talked about yesterday, those running backs with Hall of Fame pedigree, they do tend to last longer than your average running back. We've already seen Dalvin Cook fall off the cliff last year. We've got a number of free agent running backs that signed this free agency period, and they're all hyped up and looking exciting. But the funny thing is they're all actually younger than King Henry. If you're talking Joe Mixon, who I'll get to later, Aaron Jones, Josh Jacobs, definitely younger. But you can go on. They're all younger than Henry, but I wouldn't be surprised if this man outlasts him. This is a guy who put up 1,200 touches in high school, let alone the amount of times that Nick Saban pounded him into the ground at Bama, and then came into Tennessee. He actually had a couple of light years with the Titans, his first 2 seasons, and then just absolutely took over that backfield for years. So I do expect this two-year deal to go very well for Henry, chasing that ring. Good luck to him. I wish him nothing but the best. And so alongside Lamar Jackson, should be very entertaining this season in that run option offense. So as well as King Henry obviously gaining some value, don't know that there's much else there. They got rid of OBJ. Maybe that gives Rashad Bateman a shot at doing something more, but I kind of doubt it. More touches for Henry should equal less passing. So I don't know. Their offense ran very smoothly last season, and Lamar was throwing the ball more. But if anything happens, I don't see them actually throwing it any more this season. So I think that means a little bit less targets for the 2 and 3 options with the Ravens. So moving on, in the North, we'll head over to Cleveland, where the Browns went out and acquired Jerry Jeudy, who was just praying to get out of Denver. So now we have Jerry Jeudy and Amari Cooper for Deshaun Watson to try and right the ship. it was a pretty rough season for Watson last year. I know because I bought into Watson last year, hoping that he was going to bounce back to his top 5 form from the first few years in the league. They only went out and helped him by acquiring Jerry Jeudy. Jeudy won't cost you that much, probably a late second. Maybe the owner, though, is bullish on him and trying to charge you for an early second. I would say there's better options around the league, though, for an early second. I don't quite trust it yet. Jeudy just looks like a guy who was kind of defeated in Denver. And maybe this will resurrect his career. If you've got a ton of early seconds and you can't get any of the other veteran wide receivers that I'll talk about today, then maybe you can settle for Jeudy. But I'd probably rather just take my shot on a rookie in the early second rounds for Jerry than Jerry Jeudy. We move over to Cincinnati. Cincinnati had some good action going on. They, of course, got rid of Joe Mixon. First report was that they were releasing him. However, the next morning we all woke up and found that they dealt him down to the Houston Texans. And this brings up a trade that happened in one of my leagues. Bring that one up. This one was in my bottom line league, and it had the People's Champs. This one is a 12-team Superflex tight end premium start 10 league. And saw the People's Champs acquiring Joe Mixon and giving up Ty Chandler and the 306 to Scoopodopoulos. Now, this deal went down right before the trade happened, so I do think it was a little light on the end for Scoopodopoulos. However, Scoopodopoulos is in the beginning stages of a major rebuild, so he's definitely looking to unload points wherever he could, and he definitely did this by getting rid of Mixon. Ty Chandler definitely still has a shot to get plenty of touches in Minnesota. Aaron Jones, we all know, is not a 25 touch a game bell cow. Maybe 15, 20 touches a game for sure for Aaron Jones. That still leaves room for Ty Chandler to pop in a couple touchdowns, get himself 10, 12 touches a week. So there is a little upside there with Tyson Chandler still. They may bring in a rookie running back, though, that could eat into that. So Scoopodopoulos was really honestly just looking to get whatever he could for Mixon and get him out the door and off his roster. I do like this, though, for the People's Champs. Joe Mixon then, once he got to Houston right away signed him up for 3 years, which was probably more than most people expected. However, Joe Mixon is a little younger than the other guys in his class. He came in at 20 years old, so he's still only 27 years old. So he does have although he was inefficient in Cincinnati, still put up 3 years straight now, 1,400 yards. I mean, the guy was inefficient, but with the volume, which he will get in Houston, with the volume, he still was producing top 10 running back numbers, amazingly. And I don't see that changing, at least this first year in Houston for him. So once they got rid of Mixon, they went and acquired Zach Moss. And so that for a second we saw Chase Brown's value pop up, and then Zach Moss came in. So you can go out and risk it with Chase Brown if you want to go deal for him, but I'm sure the owner is just as optimistic because Chase Brown had some great flashes last season, especially late in the year. Broke off a lot of big runs, big catches, and so that could be a little muddled situation. I guess off the bat, I would expect them to have Zach Moss as the first and second down pounder, and Chase Brown to kind of stay in the same role as he was in last year. Maybe get some more first and second down work. I would look at it as kind of like a 55-45 split maybe in the backfield there for the Bengals. At wide receiver, we still have the question with T. Higgins, what's going to happen there? It's kind of obvious that Higgins wants out, and so I can't really see them keeping him there. They do have it's either the 18th or 20th pick this year in the draft, which is a great situation, great spot to land a very talented wide receiver if they want to go that route. The first round, it'll cost them less money. They can spend it elsewhere for Joe Burrow and company. So we'll see what happens with Higgins. It's still a very interesting developing story there. If we move on over to Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh landed one of the great deals of the offseason in acquiring Justin Fields for just a 6th-round pick. Now, I've never been a big fan of Fields. I never saw him as a winner, and he definitely didn't prove me wrong there in Chicago. However, he somehow became this awesome scrambler that he really wasn't that big of a scrambler in college, but once he stepped into the NFL, he really took off. And so he had those huge spike games. But again, he just never could get drives going and sustained. And, it's tough to win games when you're doing a lot of 3 and outs. And Fields' accuracy just didn't really improve. They brought in DJ Moore for him. And obviously DJ Moore had a great season last year with Fields. And so that helped a little bit, but not enough to keep him in Chicago. So the Bears cut bait. They're going to go a different direction. Probably Caleb Williams there at the number 1 overall pick. And so they just wanted to get Fields out the door. And so the Steelers were more than happy to grab him. This is after they went out and signed Russell Wilson from the Broncos, who they've got the Broncos paying the majority of the tab on Russell Wilson's contract. So Steelers made out pretty well in the quarterback room considering their situation that they had last year. And also then they went ahead and dealt Deontay Johnson down to the Carolina Panthers, and that pretty much leaves just George Pickens for all the targets in Pittsburgh. All right, Freiermuth will get a few as well, but this definitely enhances the value of George Pickens. I wouldn't mind going out and grabbing Pickens for a late first if you can. He's probably bumped up, though, to a mid-first at this point, so that might be a little steep for me. I don't know. I mean, it comes down to would you rather have, Rome Odunze or George Pickens? And trust me, I went through the last couple of years with Drake London in an Arthur Smith offense. I'm going to avoid it, but if you want to dance with the devil, be my guest. All right? That's all I got to say about an Arthur Smith offense. Except for the fact that you need to know that those running backs there in Pittsburgh will both catch the ball more. All right? Russell Wilson had the highest amount of attempts to running backs last season, and so I don't expect that to change. Both Najee Harris and definitely Jalen Warren are good receivers out of the backfield, so I could see both of them catching 40, 50, 60 balls next season. You should get a good point total out of both of them. They could both be weekly starters for you at the running back 2 spot. For your teams, definitely flex options as well. So check those backfield guys out for Pittsburgh if you're looking for help there. We'll move over to the AFC South now and start with the Colts. And the Colts let Zach Moss go, obviously, so that bumps slightly the values of Evan Hull and Trey Sermon up, and as backups for Jonathan Taylor. They also did sign Michael Pittman to a long-term deal. Now that definitely helps the confidence of Anthony Richardson heading into his 2nd season. Richardson showed great flashes last year in the little amount of time that he actually got to be on the field. And we all just hope that he can stay healthy this year and show that, the offense ran pretty well with Gardner Minshew, but definitely is more explosive with Anthony Richardson back there. So move on down to Houston, who I already mentioned, acquired Joe Mixon. That definitely just solidifies the offense. I totally understand them wanting to grab a veteran presence in the backfield rather than just going with a rookie. I mean, their offense jumped through the roof last season with C.J. Stroud showing it off as a rookie, and I can totally understand they're looking at the the Super Bowl, right? They want to be one of the top dogs in the AFC, and they don't want to be worried about their quarterback getting blindsided by some rookie missing a block for Stroud. So they brought in Joe Mixon, solidified that backfield. Now Dameon Pierce can just slide into that third down role that probably suits him best. And so that Texans backfield is looking pretty solid now. Texans also re-signed Dalton Schultz to 3 years. And so that solidifies the receiving core for CJ Stroud. Now they've been heavily rumored and a bunch of different veterans. Stephon Diggs has been rumored to go down there. We'll see. If the Texans do not sign anybody, I think they'll still be fine. So we'll move on though to in the South. We've got the Jaguars who also made a couple moves. They went out and grabbed Gabe Davis from the Bills, and they let Calvin Ridley go, who went to the Titans interdivision. Should be interesting. I don't see this really affecting Trevor Lawrence's value much. I think that Christian Kirk can slide back into the number one role. Gabe Davis is a great deep threat, obviously, and so he can take over that outside X position. And so I think that with Evan Ingram still there, there's plenty of targets for Trevor Lawrence to try and get back on track. He had a rough up and down season last year, mostly due to injury. So a lot of his owners have been down on him. I mentioned him as a buy. I still trust Trevor Lawrence's ability as a former number one pick, that he is the answer long term for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So maybe kick the tires on the Trevor Lawrence owner. I think the time to buy on him may have passed, but you never know. We'll see how Lawrence does this year. I like his prospects. If we go over to the Titans did a lot of activity in their backfield. Obviously, Henry left for Baltimore, and so they brought in Tony Pollard from the Cowboys, and so that took that kind of hit Spears' value pretty well. A lot of people were super high on Spears. He had jumped up to, I think it's running back 16 on Keep Trade Cut, which was much too high for my liking. I saw Spears as simply a third down back, and with Tony Pollard coming in, they can keep Spears in that role. So his value definitely takes a hit now from where he was at earlier in the season, this offseason. But Tony Pollard should be probably pretty similar to what he was like in Dallas last season, which, wasn't that great. But as long as your expectations aren't too high for Pollard, you'll get what you're looking for. All right. As I mentioned earlier, they also brought in Calvin Ridley. Now that really helps their receiving core. Now they have D-Hop, Ridley, and still Treylon Burks there. Burks was a real buy low guy I thought of. And you never know. I mean, you got a couple of older wide receivers in D-Hop and Ridley. They probably won't play all 17 games if you had to bet on it. So Treylon, though, hasn't been the model of health himself. But what I do know is this definitely helps Will Levis out. And so I see his value rising. They're definitely going to sling it around a lot more in Tennessee, with the Bengals offensive coordinator taking over as head coach in Tennessee. Excuse me. So I do like Will Levis's prospects now going forward. I don't know how well it'll translate into wins for the Titans, but Will Levis is definitely a guy that you can expect to improve in its second season. Now we'll head over to the AFC West, where the Chiefs have been king for a number of years, and I don't expect that to change. They went out and jumped on Hollywood Brown, brought him in for an exciting signing. It's just a one-year deal, though, one-year prove-it deal for Hollywood. It's a great spot. He gets to catch bombs from Patrick Mahomes now, basically taking over the MVS role. maybe his hands will be a little bit better than MVS's. And what I want to make clear, though, I don't see it affecting Rashee Rice's value. Okay, I still see Rashee Rice as a top 20 dynasty receiver right now. So maybe if the Rice owner in your league has gotten a little scared because Hollywood is coming to town, maybe you can get Rashee Rice now. Earlier in the offseason, I guarantee you whoever had Rice was not letting him go the way he played the second half of last season. I wouldn't let him go either. They also did not do anything in the backfield, so Isaiah Pacheco was able to slide through this portion of the offseason unscathed, and we'll see in the NFL draft if they do go ahead and grab someone. I don't think they're going to change the way they run things, though. First and second down is still going to be dominated by Pacheco, and it's definitely a piece that's very nice to have on your dynasty roster. So, don't see Mahomes' value change really any. I mean, he's still got the deep threat there now with Hollywood instead of MVS. So his value doesn't change, but hopefully the numbers will be a little better for Mr. Mahomes. And if we move along in the West, we've got the LA Chargers making some moves themselves. Jim Harbaugh coming into town, and they let Mike Williams go, then went ahead and traded Keenan Allen to the Bears for a fourth rounder. They brought in Gus Edwards for the backfield, and they, of course, let Austin Eckler go to Washington. So now they're looking at a backfield of Gus Edwards along with a mosh pit of CJ Spiller, Elijah Dotson, just a bunch of yuck. So if you can sell any of those guys for anything, go ahead and do it. Gus Edwards, though, I mean, if you had him on your roster, go ahead and keep him. He's somebody you can throw in for a spot start at just about any week for him to fall into the end zone. He's going to probably have a similar role to what he had in Baltimore, and expect Harbaugh to run it hard. I do expect the Chargers to draft a running back. Obviously, Blake Corum is the biggest name since Harbaugh had him at Michigan. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up there. But at the same time, I don't think that'll eat into Gus Edwards' work. He wasn't a guy that was getting 25 carries a week in Baltimore, but if he still gets about 15 carries, I'd say that's about what I would expect out of Edwards. Now, at the wide receiver position for the Chargers, Quentin Johnston definitely gets a little bump here. I mean, he's the only guy left standing there along with Josh Palmer, I guess. So prospects look good for Quentin Johnston. Now, the Chargers do sit at 5, and it's very interesting to see what they exactly do with that pick. Do they draft a tackle to help the Harbaugh run game? Or do they go wide receiver to help out Justin Herbert? Maybe Neighbors is there. Maybe they jump on Roma Dunze. Or maybe they just trade back with it. But I do see Quentin now having probably your last opportunity to get out on him if you can. Obviously, last season was a disastrous rookie season for him, and I don't love the prospects of him going forward, if I'm honest. But, again, if they don't draft a receiver at 5, it's hard not to like him a little bit. So, I don't know. To me, it's a situation where I just sell high right now, if you could call it that. Just get what you can for Quentin. So, if we move over to the Las Vegas Raiders, they, of course, let Jimmy G go. He's got a 2-game suspension to start the season. He headed over to the Rams as now Stafford's backup. So the Raiders went ahead and signed Gardner Minshew. And so Minshew Mania heads to Vegas. We'll see the duel with Aiden O'Connell to see who gets to run the show in Vegas. I'm going to bet on Mustache Mania and Gardner Minshew to win that battle. He did sign a 2-year deal, so it wasn't just a 1-year, $4 million deal type deal like Baker got last year. Minshew actually got 2 years. And so I'm I would bet on him winning it out. He's got some decent receivers there in Adams and Jacoby Myers. I don't know where Hunter Renfrow is going to go yet, but with Adams and Myers, Minshew's got some decent targets to throw to. Michael Mayer is there, of course, a tight end who can't do anything worse than he did in his rookie season. He did show good flashes, though, and I do expect Mayer to pop up in his second season. Now, in the backfield for the Raiders, there was that small window there for Zamir White to be a sell. A lot of people were excited about it and thinking they had their next big splash at running back, but then of course tonight they go ahead and bring in Alexander Madison. Now, I'm not saying Madison's some kind of stud. Definitely showed that he wasn't in Minnesota. However,